Hello, my name is Eric, and what I do is I take a philosophical and analytical look at the world, and I get a little tired of all the bias and extreme ideology and bad faith arguments people are making, and I kind of rather be good faith. I'd rather examine things, more truthfully. Well, when I started my channel here, and I'm still kind of just starting, I'm still in the early process here. Uh, I decided that I'm not going to like wholly shy away from political topics, but I do not want it to be like the main focus of my channel. But here and there, when a topic like this comes up, I think it more than fair to try to examine it, in an unbiased way. I think it's instructive and hopefully adding a little bit of a cool head into the situation might be very helpful. It seems like we sadly seem to be entering a period of time where we're very divided because everyone's emotions are very much running high and no one really wants to listen to the other side. Well, I'm willing to listen to both sides. And so I think today what I want to present to you is what, at least what I think, is the correct opinion to have about the whole ICE debacle. And I think we need to kind of start from the beginning of all of this. And the beginning is this question of whether there should be any such thing as border enforcement or immigration control at all. Um, I think both the left and the right wing both are partially correct and partially incorrect about the issue as a whole. But it seems like this is where a lot of times where it starts. There are people, mostly from the left wing side of things, that want to make this argument that uh, we shouldn't have any sort of immigration control at all. We shouldn't have any sort of border control at all. Uh, Typically, the kind of argument that they make is something like, well, human beings have a right to travel, and so therefore you should just let people come and go. Well, I don't think that's a really good idea, to be honest. Um, First of all, let's put aside this argument that, well, the Constitution guarantees the right to travel. Well, yeah, it does, but specifically, it guarantees the right to travel between states. It does not guarantee the right to travel from an extra national location into the United States. That is not what the right to travel is. The right to travel, which is guaranteed, I believe, by the 10th Amendment and by the Commerce Clause, uh, basically guarantees the right to travel between states. So Kansas can't say, we are no longer accepting people from Missouri. We're not going to have that anymore. Well, you can't do that. As an American citizen, you are guaranteed the right to travel between states freely. So the Constitution certainly does not guarantee that. But I think the left wing argument is more that, well, human beings should have the right to travel as they please, and it's not really a matter of Constitution, it's just a matter of being a human right. Well, I mean, it sounds nice. I would certainly like the world to be that way, no doubt. I would like to be able to just go to another country as I wish and not have to go through customs and have get passports stamped and all of that. That'd be great, right? But I'm not sure that is the best thing to have. Because if people can just come and go from the country as they please, well, then all the worst sorts of people that may wish harm upon our country are just allowed to come in as they wish. There's if you don't want any sort of border enforcement at all, then what's to stop like the worst sorts of actors, the people that wish harm upon Americans, to just come in? We don't want that. It's bad. So I would say immediately from the outset, that there's that. But even more so, even people that don't have just outright bad intentions, maybe they are here seeking a better life for themselves. Well, I'm not so sure it's a good idea to let people like that in, at least not in large numbers, because that really harms the people that are already here in the United States, that are already citizens. In fact, it harms the poorest people, the people that tend to have lower income jobs that are in unskilled or perhaps semi-skilled industries. A lot of these people are being displaced by immigrant workers, illegal immigrant workers, who will work under the table and for far lower wages. So it's very hard to compete with these or these illegal immigrants who are forced to work under the table for a lot less. You can't compete with them, and so a lot of people who are lower income find it very difficult to find these jobs because they're all taken over by people who will work for a lot less. So I find it very odd in a sense that the left wing supports these very open border type policies, or it's not all left wingers, let's be fair, but when when the left does support these policies, to me it seems very odd because you're hurting the low income workers more than anyone else. Those are the people that tend to that really struggle to compete, compared to higher skilled workers. And the reason that is because we're much more likely to it's much easier for high skilled workers to obtain visas and enter the country just legally, because they fill a lot of positions, or presumably fill a lot of positions that it's much harder to find high skilled labor. um, I'm going to put aside that, like, I would love to maybe address a little bit of that, given that I have a history of being a software engineer. I was a software engineer for several years, and that is an industry that's a very high skilled industry. It requires typically a lot of education and a lot of experience in order to succeed at it. And so there's a whole debacle going on there now with the H-1B visa program, where a lot of software engineers from other countries who are willing to work for a lot less are now coming into the country in the H-1B visa program, and companies are justifying it by saying, well, we can't find American talent, which that's not really the case. It's just the fact that the workers from other countries will work for a lot less. They just don't want to pay people, in a lot of cases, anyways. Maybe in some cases it is legitimate. Maybe you need a specialist in this particular problem or this particular thing, and the expert in this is from India or Japan or something, and so that's the only way you can really get that person. Some of it probably is very legitimate. I'm not saying it's not, but having worked in the industry, I can tell you a lot of it's not. It's just that they'll work for a lot less. So, anyways, that said, I'm not going to address that as much because that is a problem of legal immigration, whereas we're here to talk about um, people that enter the country illegally. So, uh, to summarize why I think the argument that we should just have open borders, we shouldn't have any sort of immigration enforcement is a bad idea. I think one, it allows bad actors to just come and go in the country quite freely. People that would wish harm upon the United States or perhaps want to do criminal activities like transporting large amounts of drugs and illegal substances or whatever. Put aside what you may your opinions on whether certain drugs should be legal or illegal. I might have opinions on that myself, but the point is that bad actors are allowed to come and go freely. People that may want to do criminal activities or people that might just wish harm upon the United States or its citizens. And so I think you have to really regulate who gets in based on that, but also because people that are enter the country just looking for opportunities, well, that really hurts a lot of the lower income people who are already here. So I don't think it's a good idea to just allow people to come and go freely. We have to enforce our borders. Well, there's a whole other problem now. ICE is not really border patrol. It's not really border enforcement. It's not the same. So you might say, well, this just because we should have some sort of border patrol, some sort of border enforcement, doesn't justify the existence of ICE. Now, before a lot of left wingers are going to say, well, this is a straw man because we just want to argue that ICE is violating the Fourth and First Amendment, and it's these issues that we're really protesting. I'm going to have to disagree because all the posters I see of we're going to go protest ICE and all this, almost all of these posters that I see say something like, get ICE out of everywhere, abolish ICE, no more ICE. Almost all of them say this. And to me, it's like, If your argument is that ICE is violating the Fourth Amendment, I think that's a separate issue, and I'm going to get to that because I think you have a legitimate point there. I think that's where the right wing is going to be a little pedantic about their opinion on that issue, and therefore ultimately wrong. But but that's not the argument that I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is posters that say abolish ICE, get rid of ICE. So I think this is pretty fair to address this issue, to address whether we should abolish immigration enforcement, because that is something different than border patrol. Well, the issue is that a lot of the illegal immigrants are already here. They're already in the country. So having more border patrol is not going to solve the problem of the people that are already here. It's also not going to solve the problem of people that come in through means other than the border. From what I understand, and maybe I'm wrong about this fact, someone correct me if I'm wrong, um, most illegal immigration happens when people come in here through legal means, through having a visa, and then just stay. They just don't go home. From what I understand, most illegal immigration does not happen through crossing the border, although a significant amount does. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least there is some immigration illegal immigration that happens in this way, right? So, so what you have to be able to do then is you have to have some sort of agency that can address the problem when people enter the country behind the border, behind the line, so to speak. Or for the ones that are already here, you need some way to address this. And I think there's another aspect to this because I think the left could very legitimately argue that okay, well we're not so much against immigration enforcement, but we are against like this forcible and um, maybe violent, you could even say, oftentimes violent enforcement of immigration enforcement. And I would say that there's something to this in the sense that uh, that this is a good general rule that all else being equal, a nonviolent solution is to be preferred to a violent one. I think that's very legitimate. That is exactly the case. That is what I would prefer. And if there is a nonviolent yet still effective solution, I am all for it. I will definitely back it up. But the problem here in this case is I'm not so sure that there is. You can't just ask illegal immigrants to leave because almost all of them are just going to say, well, no, I don't want to. So you're going to have to, well, force them. You're going to have to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't stay here. You came into the country uh, in a way that is not legitimate. You came here through illegal means. So we have to forcibly remove them. Now, if there is a way that is non-forcible, like I said, yet still effective, but it has to be effective. It has to solve the problem. I'm all for it. And if you have such a solution, I would love to hear what you have to say. If there's something I'm not considering or I'm not aware of, because I'm not really aware of a way to solve this problem without getting a little rough with people that won't voluntarily leave. Um, so if there is a way to do this, please let me know. Comment, say, tell me what the solution is that's nonviolent, and if it does solve the problem and it is nonviolent, I will support it over the more forcible solutions that we currently have. But I'm going to move on. I'm gonna address the rest of the video as if there is no nonviolent solution that solves the problem. I'm going to assume that there's a great deal of illegal immigrants who are not supposed to be here and who are not voluntarily uh, emigrating back to their country of origin. Okay, so I'm going to assume that this sort of forcible removal is indeed necessary to solve this problem. If that is the case, then this argument of abolish ICE is therefore a very poor argument. And I would say that the left, this is another way that they're very wrong on this issue. And don't worry, I'm kind of going, I'm trying to go through things starting at the most basic fact, like do we need immigration enforcement at all? You know, I'm trying to start there, and I'm gonna work into the more specific issues. And as we get to the more specific issues, I think you're gonna find that the left wing has better points to make, and the right wing starts to falter a little bit. But on the basic facts, on the more like basic issues here, I think this is where, um, while it is true not all left wingers are making these arguments, I still don't think it's just an outright straw man to address these issues, because I do see posters that say things like abolish ICE, um, which, well, let's be honest, like the practical effect of abolishing ICE being immigration enforcement, if you just abolish them, then you're basically saying that we have no more immigration enforcement at all. That people that are just allowed to stay here, whether they came here legally or not. Um, I'm trying to address that, because that's the practical effect of that policy. Well, I don't think it's a good idea. It's a very bad idea. Again, if you just let people come here, you're letting bad actors in. You're really doing harm to the people that already live here, that have to compete with people that will work for now on far lower wages. So so if we can agree that there is no effective nonviolent solution, we have to agree that forcible removal is the solution to illegal immigration. And again, I'm more than willing to change my opinion on that. Please, if you have a effective nonviolent solution, I will gladly support it. In fact, if you have a better solution on any of these issues, I will gladly support it. I am not attached to any of my opinions on this. I'm very open to other arguments here. Okay, I want to make that really clear. So we've established that we can't that we need some sort of border patrol. We need some sort of immigration enforcement. So we need an organization like ICE. And you might say, well, I just don't like ICE. We need immigration enforcement, but not ICE. But well, all you're asking there is that we rename the organization, because that's what ICE's job is to do immigration enforcement. So, that seems kind of irrelevant. You're just asking for a name change, a branding change. Well, we're trying to get to the actual solutions here, not just changing the name of the organization or anything silly like that. We're talking about actual policy, and the actual policy, the practical effect of abolishing ICE is having no more immigration enforcement. Okay, so that being said, now let's address this argument that I see left wingers are making, that ICE is violating the First and Fourth Amendments. They like the original argument was that they were violating the Fourth Amendment to due process, and I believe that's the Fourth Amendment is the right to due process. Um, yeah, yeah, it is, right. Yeah, Fourth Amendment is due process. Fifth Amendment is right to a speedy, fair trial. I want to say. Third Amendment is no quartering of soldiers. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yeah, so fourth would be the right to due process. So the left wing's argument is that ICE has been violating the right to due process, the Fourth Amendment. Now they've kind of added on to this that now ICE is violating the First Amendment, the right to protest for people that want to protest ICE. I'm going to address that one first, because it's the last place of disagreement on the overall policy that I have with the left. Because the fourth, the violation of the Fourth Amendment is where I'm going to start agreeing with the left and disagreeing with the right a little bit. So I'm sorry, but this argument that ICE is violating the First Amendment, I don't buy it at all. And it's because these protests are not really protests. These protests have turned violent. People are very much interfering with the actual operations of ICE. The First Amendment guarantees the right to peaceably assemble. I'm not sure the wording. You know what? Let's look it up while I'm talking here. I'm not even sure it guarantees the right to protest. I don't think that word is even used. I think the wording is the right to peaceably assemble. Let's see. First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Let's I'm going to use Wikipedia here, and we can pull this up. Okay, so I went and paused and found it and I found the wording of the text. Indeed, it does not include the word protest. Now, clearly, the right to protest does fall into the First Amendment, though, because it guarantees the freedom of speech. So you could have speech that is very, very protesting in the sense of I'm saying this governor or the president or the senator or whatever is wrong in what they're saying. You can protest against just using your speech online. Perhaps like maybe I'm doing now. I'm saying. Or at least I will be saying that the current right-wing government is wrong in some ways. Right now, I'm kind of going over maybe focusing a little more on the ways that they're right, but I am getting to it, I promise. Uh, but it's also covered under the right of people to peaceably assemble. Now, that says very specifically, peaceably to assemble. So if you're just in the, on the sidewalk holding signs, making some noise and whatnot, yeah, that's peaceable assembly. I mean, if you're making too much noise and disturbing people that might live in that place, well, that might be a little, I don't know. That might be a separate issue to look at. I'm not going to look at it right now, though. But certainly, as far as the government is concerned, peaceable assembly in the form of protest would be completely allowed. Uh, but the First Amendment says peaceably. It does not say that you can go and assault and throw things at federal officers, including ICE. It does not say you can show up at their hotel rooms and make a bunch of noise and harass them so that they cannot get sleep. Um, it doesn't, like, these are not forms of peaceable protests. So this idea that ICE is violating the First Amendment, I have to strongly agree. I think the protesters have instigated it in a lot of cases. They are, forcibly putting themselves in the way of ICE. They're forcibly um, uh, interfering with ICE's operations, and therefore they are not peaceably assembling, and therefore um, ICE has had to take proactive measures to defend themselves from these people. So I would strongly disagree. The left is not correct about this, and I would even say they're not going about this in the right way. Um, Again, if there's a nonviolent solution and it's effective, I wholly endorse it. But it seems, I think a lot of the problem with this current situation is that it seems less and less likely that there will be a peaceful solution. Um, Let me restate that. It seems unlikely there will be a peaceful solution where ICE is allowed to do its job, uh, uh, where we do enforce our immigration laws. It seems like these are two mutually exclusive things, and I think the left wing protesters that are doing a lot of this are making the situation what it is. So if President Trump was to invoke the Insurrection Act, and let's be honest here, man, that I sort of think this is going to get me a lot of blowback from left wing people stating all this, but I think this is fair. I don't. I think the right is correct in a lot of these points. I'm going to get to why where I think the left has a point, though. I promise I'm getting there, but but you know, what the left wing is doing with uh, under their own definition. Because I remember after January 6th, a lot of left wingers were arguing that it was an insurrection because there's this whole debate over what an insurrection is. A lot of them were making this argument that an insurrection is any sort of interference with official government activities. Well, under that very definition, what the left is doing right now is an insurrection. So Trump would be well within his rights to invoke the Insurrection Act and clean the whole situation up um, by the left wing's own logic. Okay, so all of that being said, maybe now we can get to where I actually do agree with the left wing and think they have a point. So sorry, left wingers, if you're like grumbly at this point. I can understand because I just went through a lot of material of why I very much disagree. But I think you have a point when you talk about the Fourth Amendment. Now, the right has the argument that the right wants to make is that the Bill of Rights in the Constitution really only applies to American citizens. Only American citizens are guaranteed the rights of the First and Second, Third Amendment, etc., on down the line. Now, I think like legally, this probably is the case. The right wing probably is correct about this, but they're only pedantically correct about this. There's major problems with this as applied to ICE. The two big issues that I see with this are, number one, ICE is made up of human beings and they make mistakes. And when they do make mistakes, not having a warrant to go into the business or residence of an American citizen, well, they really, really risk that happening. And so, because ICE can make mistakes and they can accidentally enter the residence or the business of an American citizen, even without a warrant, well, that's violating the rights of that American citizen that owns that business or residence. So, I think this argument that the Fourth Amendment, the right to due process, only applies to American citizens, I think this is only pedantically correct. In a more practical way, yes, I should have to go get warrants. The other side to this, is that a lot of times they just are entering the residences and the businesses of American citizens. Like if a very common place of employment for illegal immigrants is restaurants, but the restaurant itself might be owned by an American citizen. So it is a violation of the rights of that American citizen for ICE to just barge into the restaurant with no warrant and start arresting their employees that are employed illegally. And the right wing might say, well, they shouldn't have employed illegal immigrants. Yeah, I agree. I agree they shouldn't. And that restaurant owner, if they knowingly employed illegal immigrants, yeah, well, maybe there should be some legal consequences to that. I would agree with that. However, the fact that you have violated a law does not mean that police officers are allowed to enter your residence without a warrant. Any other crime that you might commit, and you go home and you enter your house, and they track you down a couple days later, they're not allowed to just come in there and arrest you because they know that you committed a crime. They have to go get a warrant. They have to go get a judge to sign off on a warrant. So any other crime this applies to. So I don't think that's a good argument for why ICE should just be able to come into your business and start arresting your illegal employees. I don't think it's really that much of an ask for ICE to be able to have to petition a judge and say, look, here's the evidence. And the judge looks over the evidence and says, okay, you have enough good evidence to believe that there is an illegal immigrant in this at this place, and you may enter. I don't think that's really all that much to ask because when any other crime is committed, that's the procedure. That's what the police have to do. So, while perhaps it is the case that the right to due process um, is maybe, I guess you could make the argument it's only applicable to American citizens. Um, Still, the fact that American citizens own these residences and own these businesses means yes, you need to get a warrant. Now, there is the other side to this argument, that, okay, once you have captured an illegal alien and now you are looking to deport them, a lot of times the argument goes, I don't know if this is actually what's going on. Okay, you'll have to check the facts, but let's say it is. Let's say that this is the case, that they're just deporting people without due process, without actually determining whether they are American citizens or not. Well, that's not okay either, again, because we make mistakes. So, I think the right approach would be to have due process, at least to the point of a judge determining whether this person is or is not an American citizen. Because if you can prove actually I am an American citizen, you have the right to prove that, and actually it should be the way it should be, is that it is ICE, it is the government who has the job of proving that you are not an American citizen, that you have committed the crime of coming here illegally. So it has to start there. Like you are innocent until proven guilty, sort of thing. But if you can at least cast reasonable doubt, or maybe even just outright prove that, hey, I am an American citizen. Um, you know, I, I have a green card, or I was born here in the United States and therefore have every right to be here. Um, then you should be due to that process. Now, the left claims that that is not what's going on; that they're just deporting people without that due process. And um, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I just sort of doubt that. Like that would just be kind of an astounding fact. I don't know if that's the case. If someone knows, though, again, that maybe a good place to put it would be the comments. If that is what they're doing, that is an egregious offense. That would be really bad. You have to give people the chance to prove that they are American citizens when they say that they're American citizens. Like that seems a given to me. So if this is what's actually going on, um, then I would wholeheartedly agree with the left, and I do think that the left has a point that I should be subject to the Fourth Amendment. That should be the case. That perhaps the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to not to non-citizens, to illegal immigrants, but you have to know that they're illegal immigrants first. You have to prove that first, and not only that, but a lot of times you have to enter the businesses and residences of American citizens, and so therefore not cool. Now, I guess the last thing to address here would be um, my opinion on the two videos of the two people that have been fatally killed by ICE officers. Um, I'll address the first one of the woman that was shot after uh, that was in her car, and that hit the ICE officer. From what I understand, she actually did sideswipe the ICE officer, and from certain angles in the video, that does appear to be the case that she did sideswipe him. Although I don't think he had major injuries. I think he did go to the hospital, but his injuries were relatively minor, from what I understand. Now, a lot of left wingers are claiming that didn't even happen, but I've seen the video. That looks very believable. It looks like she might have actually, yeah, sideswiped him and may have actually hit him. That being said, I will say both the right and the left are wrong on this issue. Uh, I think the officer overreacted, very much so. Um, I don't think shooting that woman helped him in any way. I don't think it helped him defend himself in any way. I think it was completely unnecessary, and at the same time, I will agree with the right wing when they say that like this woman was ordered to get out of her car and not complying, and knowing that officer was in front of her car and hitting the gas pedal, even if her intention was to get away. Yeah, she was like she obviously didn't care if she hit the guy because she ran into him. That she shouldn't have done that. That was definitely the wrong thing to do. But at the same time, I think the officer did probably overreact quite a bit. I don't think shooting her really served any purpose. Uh, at the same time, I don't think he's going to be prosecuted, and because it's such a borderline case, man, if I was on that jury, what would I say? I'd probably have to say not guilty. I think there's reasonable doubt, but it is close for me. I don't. I think he went too far, but I think given the high intensity of the situation, and I mean, an officer in that situation does not have our benefit of slow motion and several angles and all of this. Um, I might have to just vote not guilty because there is reasonable doubt. But at the same time, I could see where there is some outrage that he would shoot this woman because it didn't serve a purpose it didn't help him defend himself in any way. Uh, Now, the second incident, um, I think is this one's even stranger. There's reports coming in that there were people shouting "gun, gun" or "firearm, fire," something like that after they had already disarmed the guy, and that's why he was shot because the officer had thought that he had drawn maybe another gun or gotten a hold of the first one or something like that. But man, I'll tell you what, that video looks bad. It looks bad. That just looks like a straight up execution because the guy's down on the ground. They had the opportunity to disarm him. He looked pretty restrained. Um, I now if someone did yell gun gun or firearm firearm in that moment, um, man, that's I don't know. I might have to tell them you need to believe the evidence of your eyes, not the evidence of what bystanders are yelling. But that is me having the benefit of slow motion and watching from a distance from a cooler and calmer perspective. Being in the moment, it's very difficult to judge these things, especially when your life might be on the line, you know. So there's a degree of understandability to it, I think, but at the same time, ooh, man, that one's rougher. I don't know if I can weigh in. I don't like it. I think there's more blame to be had there. I think that was definitely the wrong move. Should not have shot him. At least should have had non-lethals ready. Um, I don't know. That's a hard argument to make too, because it's like some people you taser them and they don't really react too much, and if they have a gun, well, you kind of want you want something a little more guaranteed, you know. Whereas pepper spray or tasers don't always work. Um, so even that argument's a little hard to make, but I don't like it. I'll tell you that. Like, but using but it's not about what I like. Okay, we're trying to apply rational thinking to this whole thing. Um, I would say if you're that officer in that moment, you have to believe the evidence of your eyes. The guy is disarmed. Your fellow officers have taken the gun out of his hand. Um, you have to check to make sure that there is no gun in his hand. And if people were yelling gun, 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 um, I don't think it excuses you in this case because you have to check. You have to look at his actual hands and see whether this is actually the case instead of just firing. You know, so I think there needs to be probably quite the investigation, and there might be need to be charges on that one. I don't think he's guilty of murder. I don't think his intention was necessarily bad. It's a high intensity situation. I don't know exactly what these different laws mean, so forgive me. But something that's like unintentionally, like manslaughter, maybe the right word. I don't know the technicalities of these laws, so forgive me if I get this wrong. But something like manslaughter, like unintentional killing, seems to be definitely warranted. Um, but they do need to look at perhaps murder as well, perhaps like third degree murder. Um, I, I, I remember I think in a lot of states, third degree murder is like this sort of borderline between intentional and unintentional. It probably varies from state to state. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know these things too well. But uh, yeah, I think he's a little more guilty on the second one. The first one's a little more understandable, given that he was actually hit by the car. But I do think he overreacted for sure. He shouldn't have done that. But is it criminal and should he be charged? I think there's enough evidence to say there's reasonable doubt. The second one, I don't. I don't think there's reasonable doubt. He definitely made the wrong move. Just because someone was yelling that there's a firearm present doesn't mean you don't take a look and confirm that for yourself. You don't just shoot. That's horrible. So definitely a mistake on that one. Definitely going to have to agree with the left wing that was definitely wrong. Um, Anyways, that is my um, well thought out opinion. Hopefully, well thought out. I try to look at things as rationally as possible. There are definitely points that I disagree with about the left. Just to quickly recap, I not all left wingers make all these arguments, okay, but just going through them one by one because some left wingers do make these arguments. We fully do. We definitely need some sort of border patrol, some way to enforce our borders. We definitely need some sort of immigration enforcement where we people that are already here illegally or that come here through airports instead of crossing the border. We need some way to enforce our laws when people do this. We probably need some way to do this forcefully because I don't see a better solution that is nonviolent yet solves the problem of enforcing our laws. If there is one, again, let me know. Uh, and ICE is not violating the First Amendment because the protesters are not peaceably assembling. They are interfering with ICE activities. However, I very much agree that the left wing does have a point that ICE should have to get warrants. Um, and if this is indeed not what they're doing, if they are just deporting people without due process, if they are just going into businesses and residences without warrants, without due process, I would say this is definitely wrong. They shouldn't be doing that. Um, but and then as far as the two shootings, uh, I think the first one, it's very borderline, but I think there's cause to say that there is reasonable suspicion. Oh, excuse me. That there's reasonable doubt, not reasonable suspicion, reasonable doubt involving the case. But the second one, I would say there's not reasonable doubt. As far as the facts that I am currently aware of, no, that was definitely not right. So that's my opinion. That's my analysis on the issue. If you agree with me, disagree with me, I'd love to know. I'm always open to having my mind changed through rational arguments, and that's what I ask you to stick with. Like, because I know these sorts of topics provoke a lot of emotionality. Please make rational, logical arguments. Like, justify what your opinion. A big problem we have in this country right now is everyone wants to apply bias and ideology, and they just want to take one side on the issue, and they don't want to look at where the other side might be right. They don't want to look at where their own side might be wrong. um, and I'm kind of over all that. I would like to look at things from a factual point of view. If the right wing's correct about something, I'll say the right wing's correct. If the left wing's correct, I'll say the left wing. If no one's right, I'll say no one. So that's what I would appreciate that you do. Provide good reason to convince me of your opinion. I'm very open to it. And if you'd like more of this sort of hopefully fair-minded, I hope I'm fair-minded anyways. If you'd like more of my analysis, please like and subscribe. I cover a lot of philosophical topics, and occasionally I'll probably cover like the bigger topics as far as ice and whatnot goes, or topics like ice. That are big deals. I might cover them once in a while. Um, I just don't want my channel to become all about politics. Okay, I don't want to fall into that. I still want to cover mostly like more philosophical issues, but here and there I'll cover it. So if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. We content creators, we like it when you like it and subscribe to it. So please do. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to hearing your opinions.